You might be a religious scientist.
Might be religious scientists.
You might be a religious scientist.
If you believe in both science and religion.
If you believe in immortality.
Contrary to popular belief.
And recognize they're both talking about the same thing.
Jesus' last name was not Christ.
Life never ends.
Hey there, welcome to Truth Be Told. This is the weekly video series for Soul Evolution Collaborative. So we are excited to be here with you, just as we are every week. And this week, just like every other week, is a super fun episode. This is part 4 of You Might Be a Religious Scientist If. And we get to fill in all the blanks. We've been checking out the core concepts of the science of mind, something that I think used to be talked about within the science of mind movement a lot in the past, and maybe not so much as of recently. So we thought we would bring it back and talk about. So tonight we are on core concept 9 and 10, and that is immortality and Christ consciousness. So we're going to jump right into those. It's been a lot of fun, and we have a fun clip of You Might Be a Religious Scientist If statements at the end, just like we did last week. So stay tuned for that, because that'll be pretty great. So thanks for being here. Sit back and relax. Truth be told.
You might be religious scientists if you believe in immortality. So immortality is this universal truth that life never ends. That what we perceive as death is just moving from one form to the next. And so what we know about our essence is that we are this divine essence, this divine spark. And so that immortality, which is the universe, resides in us. And so this physical form is a home of that essence on this particular plane. And so in Science of Mind, we believe that our who and what we are, that divine spark, that essence, that integral piece of us continues on and on and on. When this body is no longer a suitable house for it, then we are transformed from the visible back into the invisible. Just like in our birth in this physical realm, the invisible was made visible. So in death of this physical body, this earth suit that we carry, is the visible being made invisible again, and then being made visible on another plane. And so with this in mind, that our soul is ever evolving, ever moving, ever changing, we are birthless and we are deathless. The energy that is us, the energy that is this spark, this divine essence within us, never dies. It never goes away. It just changes addresses, so to speak. I read a writer recently that said that she didn't really worry about death. She kind of saw it as just a radical change of address. And so within Science of Mind, we understand that death is not the end of who we are. It is merely a part of this experience that we call life. But life is always moving, always evolving, never ending. It's just always changing from one form to the next. So, you might be a religious scientist if you believe in immortality.
Good stuff, Rev Ryan.
Yeah, I love that one. So I forgot to mention as we started that we have a very special guest with us today. Rev Ryan is not with us, but Rev Chris, our biggest fan and dearest friend, is jumping right into the show with us here. So we get to talk about Rev Ryan without them being here.
Yep. That's always fun. It's one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah. Yeah, so immortality. I think this is a big one for a lot of people. This is it's one of the few things that no matter what we do, can we really prove it?
Right.
Yeah. I don't know.
I can certainly know it for myself, and certainly, like, without a doubt. But yeah, I can't prove it to anybody, which is just fine because I don't really feel the need to. But
Yeah.
You know, it's so interesting because for me, I grew up Christian, and I was always terrified of death. I mean, just terrified. Like that whole idea of like having to like sit and worship some God for the rest of eternity was like not comforting to me at all. and so I was always like really scared of death. And it's interesting because when I entered this movement, like despite the fact that there was almost more mystery in what we believe around immortality, we're like, yeah, it's something. We don't have any clue what, but like that, you know, that's not a new concept, right? But like the way that we talk about it in this or not organization, but in this movement, the way that we talk about it in this teaching was like, it provides comfort. It's like, I can't know, I just have to be in the mystery, but I can know that like it is just a radical change of address. And like, Lord knows I've done slightly less radical changes of address before, and I survived that, and I'll survive this. And so I really like that was one of the pieces that I really loved coming into this teaching was that aspect of it, and just like knowing that it's going to be okay.
You know, it's really interesting. I don't know that I've thought about what I believed about death prior to Science of Mind. I haven't thought about that in probably a long time. But I definitely didn't like the whole idea of immortality when I first found Science of Mind. I have to say, really didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And I guess like I kind of had in my mind like that, like, you know, the evil scientist version of immortality, like we're going to go replicate the Fountain of Youth kind of thing or whatever, and we're going to live forever. But I'm even just processing this like right now in the moment, like looking back on it, for us to believe what we say we believe about life and about oneness and wholeness, and what we know about science, like nothing is ever destroyed or created. It just changes form. It just changes how it shows up. That would have to be true about us too. And if we really believe in oneness, like we say we do, then form is way less of who we are, maybe, than the conscious space that we take up or utilize or whatever, right? Like, are we so much soul as the container of that essence, of that which we are? And if that is on this eternal journey, is our form way less of who we really are than we have come to believe anyway? It also brings up a whole lot of questions about what we were before we were this right here.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something we should talk about too. Yeah, interesting. That it's not, immortality is not just about death, but the whole
pre-birth.
Yeah, right. Interesting. Yeah.
But I like the saying, you know, that the opposite of death isn't life. You know, the opposite of death is birth. Because life just is. I think it's Eckhart Tolle that says that. And yeah, I mean, it's comforting, you know, comforting to know it is just this upward spiral, and we go on to something else. I think this is the one area that sometimes I slightly disagree with Ernest Holmes. I think that, you know, it's possible that we can live, our essence can live as other people temporarily, like, you know, in and out of different incarnations. Like I know Ernest Holmes didn't see it as like living, like reincarnation, as living as another being at a different point of time. He said that we go on to be something else bigger and greater. And, you know, again, like I that one, I don't know for sure. And, but I do think it's plausible that we have had other incarnations with our same essence that we're kind of logging different experiences. Essentially, what I think it is that we're logging every single experience that's ever happened.
Yeah.
So I'm actually like you incarnated right now, and we're going to incarnate as every single thing that's ever been and ever will be, and we just keep logging that, and then eventually, as we get to that point that Reverend Ryan talks about, where we poof, and and then we're done.
Yeah.
And then we start it all over again.
It's interesting. It reminds me of the computer analogy we were using the other week, right? That if we're all part of this cloud computer system, we all have access to all the files all the time. We're just only logging into this one, and so if we think of like the availability of those clouds, the cloud storage as consciousness, then the consciousness that we are right now, if we could kind of claim that word for this context, right? The consciousness that we are on this plane doesn't go away, right? So even after the body dies and starts to decompose, the consciousness that it enlivened that form isn't ever gone. And whether that is because people who are still here are remembering it and reliving memories, or are in a way kind of creating new memories, thinking about it, almost like daydreaming, or visiting in dreams and stuff, right? I mean, like that consciousness is still there, I mean, almost like Star Wars when Luke is talking to Yoda in the Force Ghosts, right? Like how, I mean, that could be totally plausible to some degree. I don't know that it would show up in like Blue Force Ghost, but why not? Right? Like, why not? Like, if everything is what it is, if everything is consciousness, everything is conscious, and everything is made up of stardust. I mean, it's all made up of the same particles, and it's like, yeah, why couldn't that be possible?
Right.
Well, and I think there's way too many stories and examples and people who have beliefs around various things. Like even the other day, I found a dime, and Ryan was like, "Oh, I don't remember the friend. That's so and so's mom."
Yeah.
And so it's like I think there's way too much to think that we don't continue. And to me, I would want to come back and like check on my people and like make sure they're okay, and all of that. Or like something that I've actually told Rev Ryan before is like, if you die and leave me right now, I will bring your ghost back and I will haunt your ghost. So so yeah, I think there's got to be a way that this consciousness continues on.
Yeah.
But I also, can I throw a potential wrench? It might not be a wrench.
Absolutely.
Because Ernest, you're right. I was thinking about that, Chris. Like, he didn't believe in reincarnation per se, and I really think that he was just tired. He was like, "Oh hell no, like, I'm over y'all shit." Like, nope. So who knows? Like,
I don't want to do this again.
Maybe he changed his tune, or like, but. So I used to believe, like in my when I was kind of in, when I was doing oneness and Diksha, oneness blessings, the belief was that we didn't, this personality, like this soul didn't continue. It was like we went back into the oneness, into the all that is, and like merged. And so I still kind of struggle with that aspect of it. Like, we believe in the continuity of the individual soul forever and ever expanding, and I'm like, I don't know. But then if it's all oneness, maybe it's both. Maybe it's the individual soul and I return to the allness. Like, maybe both of those.
Well, in a way, I mean, I was trying to figure out how to get around to that. I too have that feeling where, like, doesn't it kind of have to be both? Because like, we simultaneously are some sort of individualization of the one. So like, we know ourselves and we know life based on our individual perception, based on our ego, based on everything that makes us as individuals. And yet at the same time, I'm becoming more and more clear that we are not in any way a separate being from, like, we're wired to think, to perceive life in a way that makes us think we are separate, but we are not actually, like, even like our thoughts, thoughts that we have also show up simultaneously, like across the world. And I mean, that's been shown throughout time. Major math problems that were never able to be solved were solved simultaneously in like 3 different locations around the globe. We're really not, we're not nearly as separate as we think we are. Even when we say like we believe in oneness and there's no separation, like, yeah, except we're wired to think that we are, right? So it's like, oh wow, that goes so deep. So if we're really not any sort of separate from, like, everything that's conscious is the same conscious. Right. So yeah, we would then have to both remain individualized consciously and also, kind of like merge back together, because it was never really differentiated to begin with. And there's so much nuance in that idea of, like, how does the soul itself, the essence, continue? It's not like the personality, and yet the personality doesn't actually go away, right? Like the personality, the files are still in the cloud. Do the files continue making new, are the files continually edited? I don't know. Are they edited based on how the rest of life perceives them? Sure, why not, right? Like, we can edit a file while we're live time. If we're so our interacting with each other is like, to continue with this analogy as far as we possibly can, our interacting in person is like editing our files, right? And so if I interact with you in my mind without you knowing it, that's still making some sort of edits somewhere. Like that is like on record, in the database. So if we are here thinking about someone who has passed away, are we interacting with that file in some kind of way, right? Like we are accessing that data in some way. I don't know exactly how that works out, but I mean, it certainly gives a whole lot of weight to, like, nobody's ever really gone because they continue on in our minds or whatever, which is something I don't know that I heard a lot growing up, but heard often enough to, like, kind of take with me and kind of wonder, like, what does that really mean? Until we really break it down and realize, well, that's actually probably really true.
It makes sense, and it's all plausible too, that thing could easily communicate with us in that form that we recognize as something that this temporary individualized point of that consciousness would relate when it's my late grandmother showing up just to say hi. It may not be exactly, it's just that ultimate one consciousness, but relating to me in a way that I recognize. And it still holds the record, like you said, all those files. So I would still be important to that consciousness, and you would be. And I mean, it all makes sense. And then you throw in the one more thing about the idea of time is really experienced here. Like, this is all already done, like all in that one thing. And we, of course, add time to it, which, isn't necessary in the big thing.
I do find it interesting. I don't know how to say this in a way that doesn't sound drastic, but I find it interesting how much value we place on our individualized perspective. And I don't know that that's a bad thing. Like, I don't know how to say that in a way that doesn't make it sound like there's some fault there, but there's so much more value in the collective. Like, the collective experience just becomes so much more that, like, there's just so much more going on here than I've ever known before. And there's so much value on that that I haven't seen before, like I am now.
Yeah. See, I went a whole different direction with when you were talking about if what us interacting in the cloud with somebody changes them, right? Like that's what you said.
Yeah.
Then how important does it become to how we think about people? You know, like we're like, oh, don't talk about people, but like even how we think about people who are still here, right?
Right. Yeah, forget about that. Yeah.
Who are still in these physical forms. And I'm like, oh crap. you know, and just and then if you think about this idea of oneness, right? And how we're all so much more connected and the value of the collective experience. If you think about like every time I think about you, I'm changing you in some sort of way because our what is that? The non-local communication and all of that. So then it's like we're so connected that like we're constantly shifting one another. We're constantly changing one another just by like knowing. And then that's kind of the observer effect. Oh, I feel like we could like I could really rabbit hole this.
Honestly, it's just such a deep, it's fascinating because it's like, you know, just like forgiveness the other week was like the one core concept that's not a universal principle because it's individualized to us here in this experience, right? This is like the one principle that it's almost like everybody's pretty sure of some part of it in one way, but we really have no idea other than, well, if we believe, like we can deduce, if we believe this and we believe this and we can more or less prove those things are true, well, then this is probably what happened.
Maybe. But on like a grand scale, not any sort of specifics. Just like, you know, immortality is probably a thing.
So probably, and basically we have no idea. So we're just kind of making it up. Probably. Most likely true, though. It's a good thing to believe. Why not? Like if you get to choose what you want to believe about it, why not? We're never going to know. No one's ever going to know. So let's go with it.
It feels better.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
Believe what you want.
Yeah. The 10th and final core concept of religious science is the Christ. So the first thing I want to do is point out the difference between Jesus, the man from Nazareth, and what we're talking about today, the Christ. Contrary to popular belief, Jesus's last name was not Christ. I know that sounds crazy, but it's true. So what is the Christ? Well, simply put, it is the original consciousness of everything. It existed before time, it existed before physical matter, it existed before everything. It was just the original source, original concept, consciousness, everything. It wanted to know itself and it created the perfect vehicle to do that, which is all physical reality. So that Christ is within me, it's within you, it's within all physical matter, everywhere, always present, and it always will be. Now, when we talk about the Christ consciousness, we're talking about our own ability and awareness to open up into that. I think one of the best indicators that Jesus, often referred to as the master teacher, pointed us to, he said, the kingdom of heaven is within. This is what he was talking about. And this is what I'm talking about when we say that meditation, spiritual mind treatment, contemplation. What other spiritual practices can we name? There's quite a few. And they all have pretty much the same purpose of getting us into a deeper awareness of that bigger thing. When we say that there is a power in this universe, bigger than you, and you can use it, this is what we're talking about. One thing that I think is really cool. So the idea that there is this constant upward spiral, and what that upward spiral is pointing to is that we are all returning to that original consciousness to know it for our own individualized points of consciousness, ourself, to fully embody that and experience it and express it. And as we do that more and more, well, the world around us shifts more and more into a more hospitable, enlightened place. Now, all these great teachers, I mean, going back over 3,000 years, we've had a ton of really good teachers, and they all pointed to that same thing. And they all did it in very similar ways, which is really pretty cool. One thing that Jesus said that kind of points to the idea that even Jesus wasn't fully enlightened. He said these words, that all these things that I do, well, these and even greater will you do. Pointing to that idea that there is this constant upward movement, and really it never ends. So all these different teachers, they all have kind of demonstrated their knowing and interrelation with that Christ consciousness to different degrees. And it's pretty exciting to see how our spiritual practices can help get us to that. So like spiritual mind treatment, affirmative prayer, all these things, practice, practice, practice. The great teacher also told us other things that indicate what to be expected if we do these practices fully. One is that it is done unto you as you believe. Another is ask and you shall receive. So don't take my word for it. Go within, literally, go within your mind. Ask that thing, ask the Christ to demonstrate itself to you, and you might be surprised what happens. This is that thing, and it's pretty amazing. And the more you get little glimpses of it and interactions with it, the more life really takes on a richer and more magical point of view. So that is the Christ.
The Christ. Love it.
Chris was really seeing the Christ in himself during that.
I think so.
Segment.
It's it's amazing. Like, so I mean, I've edited these videos, so I'm familiar with them. Right? Like, this is not a new video for me. But listening to that, having just followed the conversation we just had, it's like, oh man, when the principles start to like overlap, and it's like, oh, the Christ consciousness, that's kind of what we were just talking about. That thing that, like, when we don't die, it still exists. It continues forever. Right? Like, oh man. Yeah.
Oh, so that's interesting though, because I've never thought of those things as the same thing.
I have not either until right now. I don't think either.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. It is.
It is.
Well,
I'm saying it right now. It is.
I always think of the Christ consciousness as that part of me that is like so enmeshed in the oneness that like there is no personality, there is no individualized. It's not the individualized part, it's the oneness part. And then the soul that's forever and ever expanding, whatever the hell that means, that's the individualized part. And so to say those two parts are the same part, I don't know that my brain can go there with you. But then it's all oneness, so they're all the same part.
Yeah, right? Yeah. What?
Sorry, I see the Christ as that one thing that we're talking about, the one that we are. And then the consciousness is, when we say Christ consciousness, that is just our own personal experience of that. So,
wait, so so the Christ is different from consciousness, and then you put them, and then you smush them to say the Christ consciousness,
like the type of consciousness.
Did we all learn the same teaching?
Well, that's the thing. I don't think anyone ever. It was just like it got made up. I'm pretty sure it got made up.
Pretty sure we're still making it up.
Yeah. I can look it up. I can like go by like what was taught. So just
by who? Like Ernest? Because I'm pretty sure he contradicted himself a lot.
So this is from the 1993 Foundations curriculum, Science of Mind Foundations curriculum.
Do you just have that pulled up and ready to go?
I do. It's part of our notes. So all right. So the Christ is not a person, but a principle, a universal presence, the universal image of God that is present in all creation. This is the concept of the cosmic Christ, which is present within every person. Each human individual partakes of the Christ nature to the degree that they recognize the cosmic Christ within and live out of that revelation. Jesus of Nazareth was a human individual who revealed the Christ nature to the highest degree ever known. That's pretty clear, right?
I
That's
was
what I
going to say that
said.
answered none of my questions that I was
That's
having.
what I said.
Well, that's it. Yeah,
That is what you said, Chris.
that's definitely what he said. Nailed it.
But I still, so Christ consciousness is the Christ and consciousness, Christ consciousness smushed.
The consciousness is our awareness of it, to like what degree that we are able to know it and embody it and bring it forth.
That is never how I've looked at it.
You know what? I gotta be
right
honest.
now in this second.
I gotta be honest. I think for a long time I kind of ignored it because it just sounded super Christian-y. Like it just wasn't like my jam for a while, and like it took a whole lot of metaphysical Bible to even start dropping my own baggage about like. And let me tell you, like I can really get into some metaphysical Bible at this point, and I really love the class, and I love getting in and kind of like debunking this is not what we are all taught it meant kind of stuff. But the whole Christ consciousness thing, Jesus was a cool dude. And I think he was like, you know, Chris, like you said, like he was the master teacher. I think he taught science of mind. It was just not named that then. It wasn't named anything, and then it got later got called Christianity. But you know, I don't know. Assuming he was real, like assuming this all happened, you know, I don't think he was walking around calling it Christianity. I don't know what he was calling it. So I guess I don't know. That's a.
Think about the Buddha, you know, Siddhartha Gautama.
Right.
You know, he reached a point to where he really brought that consciousness forth, and you know, he was just the teacher, kind of showing what he discovered, and very similar. People that, you know, spontaneously enlightened. Look at Eckhart Tolle, or you know. Go other mystics.
Well, and you know, Christianity today really isn't following anything that Jesus talked about. It's more Paul, right? But loosely
Paul.
Loosely Paul, really loosely, as in he's way over there, Jesus.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I guess I've always looked at like the Buddha, the Christ consciousness in the Buddha. Like, however I learned all of that, that's how it was introduced to me. And so I feel like I was able to detach that idea of like Christ being Jesus fairly easily.
Yeah.
I don't remember that being a big thing.
I actually don't know that it was brought up a whole lot in my science of mind upbringing. But I think my general take on it was it is like that consciousness, that the awareness that we're all kind of striving for. And it is like, you know, that cosmic consciousness, the consciousness that just exists, that we're all like, you know, kind of like tapping into or whatever. Right. But it is interesting to see the parallels between the idea of immortality and this idea that there is a cosmic consciousness itself. That's kind of like, it's kind of like the blueprint for the standard, like the gold standard of awakeness or what, awareness or whatever. And like that doesn't change, right? Like there is that within us that is constantly spiraling upward towards whatever that awareness is.
Nope.
Upward, because that would suggest an up and a down. So remember we were talking about in Not Your 90s, and you thought like flipping the whole science of mind symbol upside down and just
right, like upwards from
what to what.
Right.
Even that downward still is bringing more experience into our lives, which is just helping us see more of that expanded all. So, I mean, that's, I think, where it's very important, like when we say upward, but not like in a hierarchy, I'm better than you kind of way. Because it's all that whole thing. It's a spectrum. I'll go there again. We say spectrum every week.
We got
so
it. Take a shot.
You know, like even those that are on that downward spiral, they're filling in that experience of the infinite.
Yeah,
all part of it.
Well, and who's to judge the downward? Yeah, there's no better or worse or good or bad or.
Well, that's right. Yeah, there's not the word. There's really not the words. Like
sometimes I spiral to the left.
Yeah,
my spiral looks like this. Yeah,
my spiral is spiraling.
Yeah,
jagged.
Right. Yeah,
it's a sine wave.
Fascinating. Oh, good stuff.
Oh, it's me. We talked about this. Hey, y'all. So, as Reverend Dan mentioned, I am one of the biggest fans of Soul Evolution Collaborative. I would like to claim that title, but there's some amazing people who are showing up every week. And so, you know, I cannot recommend this ministry enough. And it is, you know, you're here watching Truth Be Told. Maybe this is the only thing that you know about, but let me tell you, there are so many cool things that this organization is doing, that Soul Evolution is doing, Soul Evolution Collaborative is doing. And so the best way, there's so many ways that you can support this ministry, and the best way that you can do that is by getting involved. I always tell my congregation every week that the greatest gift that you bring is your presence and your energy and your attention and all of that. And so I would like to take this moment to invite you. This is where I get my spiritual food every single week. I'm the senior minister of a church, and this is where I come to get spiritually fed. So I invite you to check out all of the stuff that they have going on. You can go to their website, soulevolutioncollaborative.org. Dan's going to put it up. Yep. .org. And there's Truth Be Told, which is happening right now. This is what you're watching. We are live on Tuesday evening if you're watching it another time. So check us out live and put in all of your comments. We want to hear your thoughts on what we're talking about. They want to hear your thoughts. I'm pretty sure, I'm assuming. Wednesdays, Chris does a meditation that is phenomenal. I literally listen to his meditations every single morning. They're amazing. And then Thursday is The Gathering, which is my favorite part of the whole week. So we get together on Zoom from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern time, and we just talk about these concepts, and we figure out how they work in our real life. How does immortality affect my everyday life? Who knows? I'll find out on Thursday when everybody else tells me. So I just so invite you to check out all of the stuff they have going on. You can go to soulevolutioncollaborative.org. There are videos, there is resources. You can sign up for The Gathering on Thursday. You can watch all the old Truth Be Told. You can binge watch, I think 17 videos on this thing called You. There's all kinds of stuff going on. So check it out and show up and bring the gift of your presence to this ministry.
You might be a religious scientist if your dog is named Ernest Holmes.
You might be a religious scientist if you own white linen pants.
You might be a religious scientist if you have your own favorite word to use instead of using the word God.
You might be a religious scientist if you believe in both science and religion and recognize they're both talking about the same thing. You might be a religious scientist if you keep talking about the shift that is happening in the world.
You might be a religious scientist if you think Jesus was a cool dude.
You might be a religious scientist if you know that God is not a he.
You might be a religious scientist if you also know that God is not a she. You might be a religious scientist if you know that no matter what we use to describe it, referring to God or spirit or whatever word we choose is never going to be adequate.
You might be a religious scientist if you still celebrate Christmas, but you're not sure why.
You might be a religious scientist if you wear mala beads everywhere you go.
You might be a religious scientist if you drive over an hour to get to your closest center for spiritual living.
You might be a religious scientist if you believe that the Bible was not meant to be taken literally.
You might be a religious scientist if you've learned to let go and have discovered an easier way of being.
You might be a religious scientist if you know that there's magic in letting go, but then have no idea how to do that.
You might be a religious scientist if you have ever struggled to tell your friends what it is that you believe.
You might be a religious scientist if you've done a lot of work to drop your baggage around the word God.
You might be a religious scientist if people think you're in a cult.
You might be a religious scientist if scientific discoveries support your beliefs and doesn't dispute them.
You might be a religious scientist if the Sundays in January equate to the first 4 chapters of the Science of Mind textbook.
You might be a religious scientist if you know that everything is ultimately happening for you, not to you. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being here and watching. That was a lot of fun. We appreciate all your support. So if you resonate with this and you'd like to see more of this in the world and you're able to financially contribute and help us along the way, that's great. You can make a tax exempt donation at our website at soulevolutioncollaborative.org. And other ways to support us, like Reverend Chris was saying, show up, enjoy, come in and join the conversation. And then another, if you're not able to financially support us, we are on a mission here to get this teaching out to as many people as possible. And one of our avenues for doing that, where we store all of our videos, including on our website, is also through YouTube. So if you like this and resonate with it, you can subscribe, click like on a video, maybe share a video to somebody else who you think might enjoy it. There's little small ways that help kind of trick out the algorithm to get this message further. So all the ways, we appreciate all your support, everything you're able to do. And other than that, stay up to date with what we got going on. You can subscribe on our website. We'll keep you on all of our little newsletters that we send out each week, and sign up for the gathering on Thursday night or for Unwind Wednesday guided meditation tomorrow night. And be on the lookout, because we are always putting new stuff out there and in the process of creating a new experience as we speak. So thanks for checking us out. Have a wonderful week, and hopefully we'll see you later.